So God, I just pray that right now that you would speak through me just for a few minutes. That God, the Spirit that you have placed inside of me would come alive in a mighty and powerful way. These words that would come out of my mouth, God, would be inspired and anointed with fire from the Holy Spirit, able to penetrate the hardest of hearts and break down the thickest of walls. In the name of Jesus, amen. I want you guys to take your Bibles and open up to Acts chapters 27. We only have 2 more weeks in our Acts series. Can I get a collective awe? 1, 2, 3. Thank you for making me feel good. All of the sermons are uploaded onto our website. So if you missed any and you go, wait a minute, how did we get here? Every single one is uploaded on our website. So please go back and watch those. We have this week and next week. It's my favorite book of the Bible. This is my very first time ever being able to preach on Acts. And I've absolutely loved it. Let's go to Acts chapter 27. I think today is maybe one of the most exciting chapters, not only in Acts, but the entire Bible. Are you ready? The reason why I love this book is it reads like a novel. Right? Today, we're going to read about storms, shipwrecks, and snake bites. That doesn't get you excited. That stuff is in the Bible. So open up to Acts chapter 27. Let's read verses 1 to 2, and we'll stop and kind of figure out how we got here. Acts 27, 1 through 2. When the time, and I always read from the NLT. In case you guys are doing the Bible on your phone, I do NLT if you want to follow along word for word. When the time came, we set sail for Italy. Now who is we? Remember, Luke is the author. So Luke is included on this book. We set sail for Italy. Paul and several other prisoners, should make your ears perk up, were placed in the custody of a Roman officer named Julius, a captain of the imperial regiment. Aristarchus, a Macedonian from Thessalonica, was also with us. We left on a ship whose home port was Adramyttium, on the northwest coast of the province of Asia. It was scheduled to make several stops at ports along the coast of the province. Stop right there. The last time we talked about Paul, this was just last week, stay with me here. Remember he was getting yelled at in the temple of Artemis. Remember there were 24,000 people shouting at Paul. And yet now Paul is a prisoner. What has happened in the chapters? Right? We kind of skipped a few chapters, but I want to fill you guys in. Last week we talked about persecution always comes if you live with power and purpose. And that's exactly what we see happen to Paul. Paul was actually now a prisoner for no crime. He didn't break any laws. He didn't hurt anybody. He's a prisoner simply for being a Jesus follower. So Paul is on a prisoner, almost slave ship, in chains, being taken to Italy to appear before Caesar. Nothing he did except step into his purpose and power. Let's jump down to verse 13 and let's see what happens on this ship to Italy. When a light wind began blowing from the south, the sailors thought they could make it. So they pulled up anchor and sailed close to the shore of Crete. But the weather changed abruptly, and a wind of typhoon strength called a northeaster burst across the island and blew us out to the sea. The sailors couldn't turn the ship into the wind, so they gave up and let it run before the gale. We sailed along the sheltered side of a small island named Cauda, where with great difficulty we hoisted aboard the lifeboat being towed behind us. Then the sailors bound ropes around the whole of the ship to strengthen it. They were afraid of being driven across to the sandbars of Syrtis off the African coast, so they lowered the sea anchor to slow the ship and were driven before the wind. The next day, watch what happens. As gale-force winds continued to batter the ship, the crew began throwing the cargo overboard. The following day, they even took some of the ship's gear and they threw it overboard. The terrible storm, check this out, raged for many days, blotting out the sun and the stars until all hope was gone. How many of you guys have seen the movie The Perfect Storm? Any? Right? Who's in that? Mark Wahlberg? George Clooney. George Clooney, and there's one other actor. It's an incredible story. It's a little sad story. Basically, this fishing boat goes out and encounters a terrible storm. And literally, what we're reading about right now, the storm was so bad, the sun didn't come out for multiple days. Imagine the darkness of those clouds, how thick they must have been for multiple days to see no light. If you're Paul, it's bad enough you're on a slave prisoner ship. But you would think that at least God would get you there smooth sailing. Now you're a slave, you're a prisoner, you're going through a storm where the sun is blocked out, it's so dark. Are you starting to see the setting? I hope you're visioning like this a movie, because this actually happened. Let's keep reading. Let's go to verse 21. Let's keep going. What happens? No one had eaten for a long time. Finally, Paul called the crew together and said, "Men, you should have listened to me in the first place and not left Crete." I love that Paul is not above "I told you so." This is like St. Paul. He's like, "You guys didn't listen, I told you so." He says, "Man, you should have listened to me in the first place and not left Crete. You would have avoided all this damage and loss. But take courage. None of you will lose your lives, even though the ship will go down." Terrified to hear those words. "For last night an angel of God, to whom I belong and whom I serve, stood beside me. And he said, 'Don't be afraid, Paul, for you will surely stand trial before Caesar.' What's more is that God, in his goodness, has granted safety to everyone sailing with you. So take courage, for I believe God. It will be just as he said, but we will be shipwrecked on an island." Keep reading, verse 27. About midnight on the 14th night of the storm. Did you guys catch that? 2 weeks straight. And we were being driven across the Sea of Adria. The sailors sensed that land was near. So they dropped a weighted line and found that the water was 120 feet deep. But a little later they measured again and found it was only 90 feet deep. At this rate, they were afraid we would soon be driven against the rocks along the shore. So they threw out 4 anchors from the back of the ship and prayed for daylight. Then the sailors tried to abandon the ship. They lowered the lifeboat as though they were going to put out anchors from the front of the ship. But Paul said to the officer and the soldiers, "You will all die unless the sailors stay aboard." Paul's saying it's all or nothing. If some of you guys leave, we all die. We all have to stay together. That's part of the vision God gave me. Verse 32. So the soldiers cut the ropes to the lifeboat and let it drift away. Just as day was dawning, verse 33, Paul urged everyone to eat. "You have been so worried that you haven't touched food for 2 weeks. Please, eat something for your own good, for not a hair of your head will perish." Then he took some bread, gave thanks to God, and broke off a piece and ate it. Can you imagine? How does Paul have the courage to still give thanks to God? He's on a slave ship. He hasn't eaten for 2 weeks in a storm, and he takes bread and says, "Before I have my first meal in 2 weeks, I will give praise and thanks to my God." Let's keep reading. Verse 36, then everyone was encouraged and began to eat. All 276 people are on the boat who were on board. After eating, the crew lightened the ship further by throwing the cargo of wheat overboard. Let's see how this ends. Verse 39, when morning dawned, they didn't recognize the coastline, but they saw a bay with a beach and wondered if they could get to shore by running the ship aground. So they cut off the anchors and left them in the sea. Then they lowered the rudders, raised the sail, and headed toward shore. But they hit a shoal and ran the ship aground too soon. The bow of the ship stuck fast, while the stern was repeatedly smashed by the force of the waves and began to break apart. A ship that is large enough to hold 276 people is slowly breaking right in front of your eyes. The soldiers, watch this, wanted to kill the prisoners to make sure they didn't swim ashore and escape. The reason is if a soldier is in charge of a prisoner, and that prisoner escapes, the government holds your life accountable. So these prisoners are like, if we crash, or the soldiers are saying, if we crash, the prisoners might run away. So let's just kill all the prisoners, so that way we don't lose our lives. Verse 43, but the commanding officer wanted to spare Paul, so he didn't let them carry out their plan. Then he ordered all who could swim to jump overboard and make for land. Go, swim! Verse 44, the others held on to planks or debris from the broken ship. Everyone escaped safely to shore. You Have you guys seen Titanic? Terrifying. Ready? Another movie, not as well known. Have you guys seen Con Air?
Yeah.
Cheesy Nick Cage movie where the plane is filled with a bunch of prisoners and the plane goes down. This is Titanic and Con Air had a baby. It's a ship of prisoners and it's going down, it's breaking, and they're all basically swimming to shore. If you are Paul, again, you did nothing wrong. You simply preached the gospel. It put you in chains. Put you on a boat, not a nice cruise. 14 days, starved yourself, you didn't see the sun. Then, the last thing you think is, God, just send me to my death safely. The boat crashes. He has to jump overboard and swim to shore. It's impossible for this story to get worse. And then let's read verse 28. Chapter 28. So once we were safe on the shore, we learned that we were on the island of Malta. And the people of the island were very kind to us. Thank you. They needed wind. It was cold and rainy, so they built a fire on the shore to welcome us. Verse 3. Look at this, guys. Not making this up. As Paul gathered an armful of sticks and was laying them on the fire, a poisonous snake, driven out by the heat, bit him on the hand. You gotta be kidding me, right? You finally get to land. After everything we've talked about, there's a fire. You just want to warm up in front of it, and a snake, a poisonous snake, comes out and bites you on the hand. Has anybody actually been bitten by a snake in this room? No. I've been stung by a bee, and it ruined my day. I was a baby for 24 hours, icing it, taking Advil. I cannot even imagine a poisonous snake biting. If I were Paul, I'm done. It's done. I've been through too much to have anything positive come out of my mouth. I'm going to go bury my head in the sand and wake me up, God, whenever I'm back on my slave ship. There's no way. I'd be so pouty. I would be so upset at these circumstances. I did nothing. Paul didn't do anything wrong. And here he is, a poisonous snake dangling from his hand. Keep reading. Let's finish this story up. Verse 4. The people of the island saw it hanging from his hand and said to each other, a murderer, no doubt. Though he escaped the sea, justice will not allow him to live. Paul, was pretty tough, shook off the snake into the fire and was unharmed. The people waited for him to swell up or suddenly drop dead. But when they waited a long time and saw that he wasn't harmed, they changed their minds and decided he was a god. Oh, you're not a prisoner. You're not a murderer. You're a god. Look at verse 7. Near the shore where we landed was an estate belonging to Publius. Great name. The chief official of the island. Publius, he welcomed us and treated us kindly for 3 days. And as it happened, Publius' father was ill with fever and dysentery. Look what Paul does though. After everything has been to Paul, went in and prayed for him. And laying his hands on him, he healed him. Then all the other sick people on the island came, and they also were healed. As a result, we were showered with honors. And when the time came to sail, people supplied us with everything we would need for the trip. Story's over. Credits are rolling. Scene done. Storms, shipwrecks, and snake bites. And look at after everything Paul has been through. What does he do? He ends up looking for opportunities to continue to live with purpose and power. He said, hey, your son is sick. By the power of Jesus Christ that lives within me, you are healed. Hey, I heard that other sick people are here. Hey, come bring them, and I will heal them in the name of Jesus. Paul could have just threw in the towel and said, I'm sick of this. And at least while I'm on this island, God, I'm not going to serve you. I need a break. I need at least 3 weeks where I'm not facing such constant persecution. And yet that's not what happened. Paul says, if I'm here, I might as well make something of it. If I'm on this island, I might as well continue to live with purpose and power. How is he able to do that? After everything that he's gone through, how is he able to still maintain such focus on what he was called to do? And there's something that Paul understands that I think so many of us miss. And if there's anything you hear from me today, I want you to hear this message. Are you ready? All eyes on me? Like teacher? All eyes on me? Ready? Is that God will bring good from every situation if you let it. Let me say this again. What I believe Paul knew that so many of us forget is that God can and will bring good from any and every situation if you let him. Amen. Amen. One of my heroes is somebody named Dan O'Brien. He's actually my wife's dad. And I was unfortunately never able to meet Dan because Dan passed away before Aaron and I had met. But the stories of Dan have always inspired me. And I've shared this a few times with some of you, but it's worth telling today. The last months of Dan's life were pretty terrible. He was shipwrecked in a hospital for months at a time. He was shipwrecked as an illustration. But if you can imagine what it must be like to be in a hospital for 30, 45, or 60 days straight, that's a miserable experience. I have never even begun. I have no idea what that's like. And yet the last year of Dan's life was filled with these continual long stays in these hospitals. He was shipwrecked, unable to leave this dirty, cold bed of a hospital. And Dan O'Brien could have thrown in the towel. Said, I can't believe I'm separated from my girls. I can't believe I'm separated from my friends. I can't believe I am here. Dan was in his 60s. He's too young to be in a hospital bed. But Dan, like Paul, know that there's no situation that God can't bring life from. So Dan made it his mission. And his girls heard him say this. He said, if I'm here, I might as well make this hospital bed my mission field. And Dan made it his mission that every nurse that came in to see him, that he attempted to share the gospel with. Dan said, if I'm here, I might as well trust that God can bring something good from this. Because like Paul and like Dan, there was never a situation that God couldn't bring some life from. See, usually we compartmentalize our life. Watch this. You'll know what I mean. Over here is the things that we allow God to redeem. We have a lot in this column. Our past, maybe our mess-ups, we have a lot in this column. But all of us will have a few things that we've actually kind of set off limits to God. For example, like God, you can bring something beautiful from my past, and you can bring something beautiful from maybe my skills. But God, you can't bring anything beautiful from my parents getting divorced as a kid. Like that's off limits, God. Or yes, God, you can redeem my disability. God, you can redeem my parents' story. But maybe, God, the abuse that I suffered, that's off limits. See, for a lot of us, we give God access to a lot of storms in our life. A lot of the shipwrecks, a lot of the snake bites, we welcome, say, God, go ahead and use it. But if we're honest, there are other painful experiences that we don't even want to allow God access to. And there's a few reasons why. One, I think for a lot of us, if we even invite God to bring something good from it, it kind of feels like God caused it to happen. Stay with me here, right? Sometimes it feels like God brings something good from my dad passing. And it kind of feels like, wait, God, did you cause my dad to die? And I don't want to think in terms. And here's the thing, we don't know. It doesn't say God caused the storm, or the shipwreck, or the snake bite. And I want to throw away that lie. that if you give God access to it and ask him to bring something beautiful, you are not connecting the dots and somehow saying that God caused the abuse, or God caused the tragedy, or God caused the loss. I think another reason why we make this part off limits to God is because we think that if something good comes from it, then maybe the trauma wasn't that bad. Or the injustice done to us, it somehow becomes less bad. And so we want this heinous act that was done to us to remain evil. And so we refuse to ever let any ounce of good come from it. Because the second something good comes from it, then it diminishes the pain that I went through. And I'm here to tell you that's a lie. Believing that God can bring life and beauty from something, it has nothing to do with diminishing the act. It simply has all to do with the belief in how big your God is. Some of our best friends are Doug and Jesse Brown. Doug actually shared here a few weeks ago. And the Browns went through years of painful, tragic infertility. Shot after shot, test after test, $20,000 spending for the top medical treatment, only year after year, month after month to be told you're still not pregnant. And slowly, as the doctors continued to reveal the diagnosis, it not only was a problem with her body, it was a problem with his body. Both of their bodies were shipwrecked and snake-bitten. And what I love about the Browns, and if you heard some of Doug's story, they recently have started a nonprofit called Uniquely Knitted. And the nonprofit is 100% geared towards helping couples who are going through infertility. Now, by them starting a nonprofit, does it somehow mean that the trauma they went through wasn't that bad? No way. Does them basically bringing something good from their pain, does that mean God caused them to never be able to have a baby? No way. They simply, like Paul, like Dan, said, if this is the cards I've been given, I might as well trust and believe that God can bring something good from it. God doesn't cause the storms and shipwrecks every time. And when we allow him access, it does not diminish the severity. It simply exalts our God and says, God, even you can make something good come from even this. And I'm not saying that all of us need to go and start a nonprofit. Look at this verse. It's one of my favorite verses, 2 Corinthians 1. It's very simple and yet profound to me as we go through tough times. It says, all praise to God, this is 1 verse 3. All praise to God, the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. God is our merciful Father and the source of all our comfort. Look at this next verse. He comforts us in all of our troubles so that we can comfort others. When they are troubled, we will be able to give them the same comfort that God has given us. Paul's giving you baby steps into allowing God to redeem your past storms. He's saying, what if you took the trauma, the snake bites, and the storms, and just simply said, God, maybe I'll help somebody else who's come through it. Maybe your way of inviting God to bring life from your storm. Your first step is saying, God, would you give me eyes to see who else is struggling with this? And God, if in some way I can comfort them because of what I've gone through, then so be it. There should never be a situation that is dark, too dark, for God to bring light. There should never be a storm that is so severe that God can't bring some beauty from. There's a famous verse that we all quote in times of trouble. It's Isaiah 40, verse 29. Go there if you've got your Bibles. Isaiah 40, verse 29. It's very comforting, and I love it. But there's something unique about it that I feel like sometimes we miss. And I know from my life, I missed a lot. Isaiah 40, verse 29 says, he gives power to the weak. He's talking about when you're in the storm, when you're in the midst of trauma, when you're in the midst of being snake bit, and your life is crumbling down on you, and you're crying in the sand. Look what God says. He gives power to the weak, and strength to the powerless. Even youths will become weak and tired, and young men will fall in exhaustion. Watch this verse, though. This is the hope that we have. But those who trust in the Lord will find new strength. They will soar high on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary, and they will not walk and not run. Let me tell you what I like about this that jumped out to me. I love that. Keep it on this slide. That in the midst of trauma and storms and shipwrecks, God uses the analogy of an eagle. Because there's something really fascinating about how eagles fly that really no other bird flies. I don't know if you guys noticed it, but do you know that eagles rarely ever flap their wings? Look at it. I'm going to defer to the bird experts. Check out this next slide. Two scientists who are much smarter than me who studied eagles. I'm not an eagle expert. John M. Gerard and Gary R. Bortolotti. It's a great time name. Write that eagles, ready, are capable of sustained flapping, but they usually spend a little time doing it. Look at this next slide. During the month when Cindy, that's one of the female eagles they studied, that's a great eagle name. Cindy, we're on a first name basis. When Cindy was observed intensively, she averaged less than 2 minutes per hour in flapping flight. So of an hour, 58 minutes is just going like this. And only 2 minutes is spent doing this. Let me tell you why I find this fascinating when God links it to storms and trauma. The way eagles can do this is they look for something called thermal pockets. They're essentially really strong, sudden bursts of wind. And you would think that a bird would want to avoid sudden, strong bursts of wind. Yet eagles know that it are these sudden bursts of wind that propel them to go where they want to go. It's these storms, these gusts, that when an eagle spreads its wings, actually propels it to a new journey. And I find it so fascinating. I've always loved when Scripture links surrender to arms wide open. See, I think for so many of us, we're like hummingbirds in storms. When our lives are in storms and there are shipwrecks, we just flap and we scream and we blow our energy. We never go, God, I'm going to trust you. Because that's terrifying. We'd rather flap, we'd rather work, or we'd rather curl up in a ball. And yet if an eagle does either of those, he'll get thrown off course by these strong pockets. Or if he curls up in a ball, he'll just fall. An eagle can only survive these strong pockets of wind when he opens up his wings and just says, fine, I'm going to ride this out. What if we took that approach to the storms in our life? That the next time the sun is blacked out for days because we lose somebody, or we get fired, or our kids get sick, or there's holiday trauma, what if instead of fighting it or burying our head in the sand, we had such belief in God that He can redeem any situation that we said, God, I have no idea why I ended on this crazy island, but I trust that you can bring something good from this. And we allow that posture of surrender to actually be what takes you to something beautiful. Paul's sitting on this island going, I have no idea how I got here. But I trust you, God, that I'm on this random island of Malta for a reason. And Dan O'Brien is shackled to a hospital bed. So I have no idea why at 66 I got to spend 45 days straight here, but I trust you. And I believe that you can bring something good from this strong gust of wind. One of my favorite, and the last inspiration I'll say about this topic, is a guy named Jake Olson. Jake Olson is a local kid. He actually went to my high school, Orange Lutheran. And Jake Olson recently became famous because he became the first ever blind person to play college football. Think about that. Football, blind. Became the first person to ever play college football blind. I want to show a little video about him. And did you see it up there? Perfect.
When Jake was a year old, he was diagnosed with retinoblastoma, cancerous tumors in both eyes. Doctors removed his left eye, but with chemotherapy and radiation, were able to save his right. That right eye has shown him his world. The faces of his parents, his twin sister Emma, and the things he loves most. Over his 12 years, the cancer came back 8 times, and 8 times Jake beat it. In September, Jake learned it had come back again, and this time treatment didn't work. Jake learned he would lose that eye too.
I said, well, Jake, how you doing, buddy? You okay? And he goes, yeah, Mom. He goes, you know what? He goes, this is just going to be a new stage in my life.
Just sad, like I won't be able to see them ever again. And just like we fought so hard and yet cancer wins. So, but then it's like, well, I'm going to experience something that no one else can experience.
For the next video.
It wasn't the fear of being blind, it was more the fear of, all right, this is like my last minute to see, last hours. That was the fear. I saw a light, like white kind of, it was like white light, and I heard my mom and dad talking to me, which comforted me, and I really didn't feel sorrow because it's already happened. I can move on, I can do whatever I want. I don't have to worry about that. I don't have to worry about that day coming. It's already happened.
6 days after his surgery, Jake had a promise to keep. And this time, it was the Trojans who, after losing to Stanford days earlier, drew inspiration from Jake.
All right, guys, you lost, but you know what? We'll get them next year, and the year after that, and the year after that, and the year after that, and the year after that. All right, so don't feel bad. We're gonna go clean those ruins.
Nice job, check it.
At a young age, I learned that life will bring adversity and challenges. The biggest reason why I overcame, and so have a positive attitude is because I have a strong faith in the Lord Jesus Christ. And no matter what challenge we face, we're all going to be fearful. But what makes us different is how we face our challenge and how we face our fears. And that's in a positive attitude or a negative attitude. Are you going to let the situation beat you? Or are you going to beat the situation? And every time my cancer came back or I found out that I was going to have to go for some harsh treatment, I wasn't going to let the situation beat me. Even though the cancer did take my eyes, it did take my will to go on in life and be the best I can be.
Here's a kid that had 12 bouts of cancer before he turned 12 years old. Lost an eye as a young kid, loses his other eye later. Those videos are about 10 years old. He's actually now like 23. He graduated USC. He played at USC. He's actually a blind golfer now. He's an incredible golfer. He actually, ready for this? He serves and volunteers at the Blind Center right behind us. And you guys know, we share this property with the Blind Children's Center. That's right behind us. He serves there. But this is what I want to see. He actually travels the world, and he gives his testimony, and he shares how the power and strength that he got is from Jesus Christ. Jake doesn't spend time wondering, did God cause my blindness? Jake doesn't say, well, if I somehow allow God to bring good, that somehow diminishes the tragedy of a child losing their eye. Jake doesn't mess with those questions in the same way Dan didn't, in the same way Paul didn't. Jake says, God, if this is the storm that I'm in, if this is the prison ship that I'm on, well, I trust that you can redeem this. And to me, that looks a lot like soaring. I see a kid who's opened his arms and said, okay, God, may you take me somewhere new. May you give me a new perspective, and may some good come from this. I'm asking you guys today to look at your life, your past and your present, and to identify the storms and the shipwrecks and the snake bites, the loss of loved ones, the abuse that we have endured, the pain of breakups, praying pain of being left, all the things, your son has been blotted out for days, weeks, and months, and years. And I'm asking you, in faith as your brother, to consider giving God the ability to bring good from it. To take this darkness and say, God, in your goodness, can you bring some light? And that God, by you doing that, it doesn't diminish my pain or justify what was done. It simply is a posture that, God, you are good enough to bring light from the darkest of storms. So I want you to look and identify which things you've compartmentalized, which storms are open to God, and which storms are off limits. I want you to identify, maybe right now you're going through a storm, and you are just flapping your wings, fighting to control every element. Or maybe you're not even flapping, you're curled up in a ball, and you feel like these gusts of wind are throwing you off course. I'm asking you to consider a different posture, and that's one of surrender. Where you say, God, I trust that you can bring something good even from this. Because there is no storm, and there is no shipwreck, and there is no snake bite that cannot be redeemed by God. And that God can and will bring good from every dark storm of your life if you let Him. So if we can step into that posture and see what heights we soar to. God, we thank you for this truth of hope. God, we thank you that you can bring beauty.